Welcome to the Golden Nugget Podcast, Company Grade Officer Table Talks. This is Captain CJ Beckmann. I'm joined again today with Captain Rebecca Doucette from the 300th MI Brigade, and I'll get it right this time, Eric, I promise, Captain Eric Johnson from the 65th Field Artillery. So part two here, we're going over the command philosophy of our Adjutant General here in Utah, Major General Michael J. Turley. And to summarize what we were talking about before is essentially he has this command philosophy framed out into what he calls his 3 Bs, which are be accessible, be clear, be bold. I did that in the wrong order. Be clear, be accessible, be bold. Today, we're going to just talk for a bit here, really unpacking this third B of be bold. So Major General Turley, in his command philosophy, writes, "To fight and win, we must exercise mission command. Mission command is both philosophical as well as practical. Philosophical in that it guides people to teach and trust their subordinates, and practical in that it allows more brains to work a problem than one who just happens to be in charge. Mission command allows for commanders to give end state and guidance with caveats and limits where appropriate, but also allowing subordinate leaders throughout the organization to exercise speed, flexibility, and tempo as combat multipliers." Let's just start right there, just kind of right up front. So the framework here, again, using this idea of mission command, might be good to actually pull up the principles of mission command as we're talking about it. But this idea of being philosophical and as well as practical. Philosophical in that it guides people to teach and trust their subordinates, and practical in that it allows more brains to work a problem than the one who just happens to be in charge. And then he talks a little bit about what that actually means from a commander's perspective. But talking a little bit about mission command, and from this perspective, what kind of stands out to the two of you here as we get started on this?
For me, it in terms of it takes more than one brain to work a problem. You have to have multiple brains. It goes back to the very first thing he said. He put in the philosophy about 2 people can be in the foxhole, but and one of them might be in charge by position, but both can be leaders. And as a commander, as a leader, at whatever level, you have to have humility. And that humility then would alert you to the fact that you don't have all the answers. And yes, you're responsible for providing that guidance and direction. That's that mission command part of it. But once you provide that guidance and direction, an end state, you've got to let the subordinates run with it. Otherwise, you're getting too much into the weeds, and they're going to resent you, and nothing will get done.
Yeah, mission command for me is pretty simple in terms of its idea, and that is using an order to allow your subordinates to exercise disciplined initiative, and in a phrase that is decentralized decision making. And he points out that this method of command and control presents a unique problem set to our enemies. You can see this in Ukraine and Russia right now. Ukraine is using mission command. Russia is not, and they are getting worked because they cannot decentralize their decision-making process. And if you can't do that at the pace and speed of the current combat environment, you will lose. And that's why they're losing, because they're not exercising mission command.
Yeah, and that's to this last paragraph that I hadn't read yet, but you're getting ahead of me. No, I'm just kidding. So initiative throughout an organization provides a level of uncertainty to our enemy as well as flexibility to our own forces. It relies on a networked or collective approach to success versus a
a single point of failure through one leader. So that's to your point of what you're talking about, is that difference between Ukraine and Russia, right? Is that our ability to decentralize that decision making makes us a problem for our adversaries, because they can't point to one person and be, if we can get in their head, we can figure out the whole game plan.
Right.
They have to get in every head at every level to figure out the game plan, right?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because in artillery is a lot about targeting. So we own the targeting process. And so when you're looking at like the targeting lists of what assets are we targeting for the enemy, I was reading Ukraine's targeting list, and their C2 nodes, like targeting Russia's C2 nodes, I think was either 1 or 2 on their list. That's because they understand that that's how you destroy the Russian army. On ours, if you hit our C2 nodes, right, in theory, right, if we're doing it right, it doesn't really affect a whole lot on the battlefield. A little bit of confusion, but not a lot, because we're so decentralized. And so, this is huge. And as I've been reading his philosophy, the whole command philosophy that keeps going through my head is like, my command philosophy is do everything the opposite of what Russia does. Because everything he's talked about so far is enabling decentralized decision making. There's not one leader. Everybody has leadership responsibilities, Yeah. And it's about everybody taking ownership and responsibility for the fight.
And in order to exercise good mission command in the way it is intended, you have to be clear in your guidance and direction and your purposes, your end state. And you have to be accessible, meaning you've communicated that, and everybody knows it, from Private Snuffy all the way up to First Sergeant Jones or Sergeant Major Jones and Platoon Leader Jones. And so if they all understand it in MI, you're going to have a team that's doing Russian translation, a team that's doing Ukrainian translation, a team that's doing Chinese translation, if they take out the C2 node, the leader of that team is still going to know, I got to bring, what to do with that intel. And so that we can continue to fight, even if our C2 node is taken out. So watching the Russia-Ukraine as it's going down right now, it's fascinating to see. They've been puppets for a while, the Russians, ever since the first day they crossed into the Ukraine, because we took out a general, and everyone below them they didn't know why they were there. And
what country they were in.
A soldier who's targeting, in artillery, or who's translating and analyzing and putting together an intel product, knows or should know why they're doing that work and what the end state is.
Yeah. And I think it's, having this, we'll get in a little bit to, he's kind of prefacing this idea of be bold by kind of going back to, obviously kind of stating the importance of mission command, but then, obviously the idea of being clear, be accessible, everything he's talked about to this point. And, I encourage everyone to go back and listen to the previous episode where we covered those two aspects of this command philosophy. But the idea of, where does being bold come in? And he really starts to pick up on that in this next bit of initiative can't operate in an organization of zero defect, where every mistake is fatal to a career. Prudent risk-taking should be encouraged and supported as long as safe practices and risk mitigation is utilized. Being stupid about risk shouldn't be tolerated, but an understanding of the risks and a healthy tolerance are the only prudent method to grow, improve, and succeed. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Of course, initiative ends where law or regulation begins. We will not skirt the right thing in an exercise in initiative. We will always do what is right. Your subordinates will make mistakes. Be prepared to underwrite these mistakes and realize that an effective leader must be grown through experience, and much experience is gained through mistakes. Accept responsibility for your subordinates' mistakes
while making them responsible.
To me, this ties directly into a book by Carol Dweck. It's called The Growth Mindset. And in it, she lists numerous examples from business to parenting to teaching in which those who succeed are the ones who have learned from their mistakes. So it's not just the military. It's, General Turley is taking this from known best practices. And you look at athletes like, Serena Williams or Roger Federer, any of those, they've made mistakes in their career. Even Tom Brady made mistakes in his career. But if you're in an organization, as a leader, you create an environment where that's okay, as long as you learn from it, then again, you're making yourself accessible, you're being clear, and you're also allowing everyone around you to be bold, because now they're not afraid to come up with a solution that's going to move you forward.
Well said.
No, so, it's interesting. I'm looking back through this, and not once in this section does he say, other than the title of this paragraph, "Be bold," does he use the word bold to describe what he's talking about. He's talking about a variety of other things: initiative, mission command, mistakes,
growth, learning,
risk, growth, learning, improvement. I do appreciate for some reason, there's something very satisfying to me seeing the word "stupid" in a major general's document. Being stupid about risks shouldn't be tolerated.
He's being accessible.
Very accessible.
Very accessible.
Very accessible and very clear. But it just, it is very, you can feel, I can feel what he's talking about. Like, right. You just know what he's talking about when he's saying that. But this idea that being bold is directly connected to being willing to accept risk. Right? It's that idea that being bold means you're good with the mistakes. Like, it's not be bold, like do brave things and be successful. It's be bold, try some stuff and fail. Especially, and I think, this, I would really be interested, and when we get the opportunity again, speaking of being accessible, we hope again to have General Turley come for his evening with the company grade officers that we've been doing for the last couple of years. And I'd really be interested to ask him specifically about that, about where that connection is. Like, where did this one come from for him? Because
don't be stupid with risk.
Don't be stupid with that. But just this idea of why being bold is a value for him. Because I can see it of one of two ways. I can see it is, I think maybe we've all experienced or heard of experiences of people having, that idea of an organization being zero defect, where everyone's scared to make a mistake because it does have an impact on a career. Like I'll read that sentence again. Initiative can't operate in an organization of zero defect where every mistake is fatal to a career. Like, that's an informed statement there. Like, he's talking about an experience. I have to think he's talking about an experience that he's had in his career or that he's seen, because that's a very clear statement, I think, to all of us, of this idea of zero defect is not a place to grow.
So okay. So I want to say,
you got the wind up. You got the wind up here. I got
the wind up. No, I think this is a really crucial principle, and I'm just trying to think of, is this a tangent? If it is, let's go.
Let's go.
So the zero defect mentality is a logical fallacy. So it's a defect in thinking. And the reason that is because if you have someone, so you think about what's Putin doing right now with all of his generals?
He's not talking to them.
Well, he's not talking.
He went to
them.
Sochi.
He's not talking to them, but he's also firing them, right?
Some people happen to jump out of 6th floor hospital windows.
Right. Yeah, we have a zero defects mentality over there, right? I think he has overturned one of my. I'm getting all tongue-tied. One of my measures of how I measure a leader is how much turnover they produce. If you have a staff, or if you have people around you and subordinates, and you are cycling through them, that is a red flag to me. That you don't understand your role in creating the defects. Number one. But the reason that zero defects is a logical fallacy is because if you have these generals who have been in the war, right, for 6 months, and you are just wholesale firing them, right? If you're thinking statistically or probabilistically, who has the most experience in that position? Is it going to be the new guy? No.
Yeah.
Probability-wise, the new guy is going to make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay? And so when people sometimes firing people is the right answer. Right? It is the right answer. But it's nowhere near as often as, a zero defect mentality, because you are lowering the probability of achieving your goal because you're taking out relevant work experience whenever you overturn a leader. And so it's much more cost effective to re-coach that individual, because if they've made that mistake, well, now they're not going to make that mistake again. Like, someone else doesn't have that experience. They might make that mistake that's not as ingrained to them as the emotional event that was for this other person. And so the zero defects mentality is an error in thinking. That somehow like the environment, all these other factors didn't affect, and it was just that person. It's like that person is just one part of the system, right? And so if you're getting, like Putin is, over and over and over again, consistent failure, it's probably not your generals, right? And the faster he overturns his generals, the faster he's going to lose.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
I think that goes back to, again, Carol Dweck and the growth mindset. You make a mistake, if you can learn from it, now you're coming back stronger. You put resiliency into it. And to me, when I read this section on be bold, it brings up the word fear. We'll start big and then we'll go small. How has Putin gotten to where he is? Because right now the critics are coming out and they're starting to point fingers. But who are they pointing the finger at? They're not pointing the finger at Putin. They're pointing the finger at everyone around him, saying he was misled. But what they're missing, of course, because this is Russian propaganda we're talking about, those people around him have been telling him what he wants to hear. And the reason for that is because they're afraid, because they aren't being bold. They aren't taking initiative. They have that, they know Putin has a zero defects mentality. And they know that if they say something contrary to what he wants to hear, they might be fired. You bring that down back to the National Guard and leading troops. We have to know, as leaders have to know, where can I take risk and where can't I take risk? Okay, if you're talking, speed limit or some major defect in a vehicle, okay, I'm not going to take it out. Or there's a blizzard. Then that's when you follow General Turley's don't be stupid with that risk. But if it's other things that might be acceptable, like, okay, I can't think of an example right off the top of my head, but there's a whole bunch of other examples where maybe you don't have the inserts for your body armor or something like that. You've got to be willing to take that risk. And sometimes if we're only following the reg back to what we were talking about in the past episode, we're only saying, well, this is what it says, this is what I have to do. And we're not willing to listen to that initiative coming from the rest of the team. Really, we're a team when we go out into the field, when we go onto the range, when we go and do language training. It's always a team mentality. And everybody has something to contribute, or they wouldn't be there. Everyone has an idea, a suggestion for improvement, that continuous improvement that you talked about before. And so our job as leaders is to ensure that culture of fear of speaking up, fear of being bold, fear of taking initiative does not creep in. Because the minute someone is afraid to speak up, again, you've just lost that little fight. And in the case of Russia, that's a big loss. And we need to train every day to allow that clear communication, that accessibility, so that soldiers can feel confident in being bold and bringing that initiative to the table. Because, as he says at the very beginning of this section, it's multiple brains.
Yeah.
And it goes back to humility. So it all ties together. And so that's what I think he's saying is, don't make other people afraid. And sometimes you, as a commander, maybe you can lead that mindset by, okay, I'm going to go and ask the general question. I'm going to go knock on a door of some higher ranking person. You can demonstrate that, leading by example with being bold. And then they'll feel like, oh, if my leader is willing to do that, then I'm willing to go to them with my initiative and my suggestion.
Yeah, and obviously, it's kind of something, I don't think you were necessarily referring to this, but obviously, like, we have law and regulation that holds us, that we're accountable to. We can't, an initiative, just as he says, initiative stops or ends where law and regulation begins. And also, when we're saying we don't want to be stupid with risk, we don't want to be stupid with equipment. And especially we don't want to be stupid with people's lives.
However,
yeah. But what I'll say is, what's interesting is this idea of a zero defect mindset is the quickest way to get people killed in war.
Absolutely.
Like, if you're in a zero defect mindset in training, you don't train the flexibility, he talks about this, the speed, flexibility, and tempo as combat multipliers to be able to withstand the fog of war. And it's actually interesting is what he's talking about here is a flexible, risk-taking, accepting prudent risk, using mission command is probably the most effective way to build a zero defect force when the consequence is not fatal to a career, but fatal, period.
And it goes back to what Eric was saying. You said, I measure a leader by the turnover in their organization.
right.
And so if people are afraid to come forward with their suggestions for improvement, what are they going to do? They're going to feel like, I have no voice, I have no purpose, nobody's listening to me. And so I want to leave this company, this battery, this whatever. I'm just going to get out because nobody ever listened to me. And General Turley makes it clear throughout his philosophy, everyone is important. We need to think of them as people with their own experiences and understanding of your intent, and it all ties back together. And you'll know if you're doing it wrong when you start seeing a lot of turnover.
Yeah. Another part of it too is this idea. I think back when I hear talking about trying something new, right? You hear somebody say, it's like, I want to try something new. Like, this is what it says. This is what our SOP says. This is what doctrine says.
Yeah.
I want to try something new. And that person, from the cynical side, it's like, what is that person going to hear from somebody that maybe just wants to get the exercise over with? Think of it in a training environment, right? Yeah. They're going to hear, well, no, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what works. This is what's going to get us home, or right. Earlier. And so what's and maybe that's true. Maybe it's tried and true that the way that's been tried is true. what I've always found is it's still valuable to go through the process of trying something new, because it's a win-win. Is either you've found a way that actually works better, or you've further validated that what you've been doing is still the best way to do it. Yeah. And it's that kind of idea, I've when it comes to training, I've tried to approach this sometimes too, is I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I may have done this task 1,000 times. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I want you to go and do it, and then let's see what worked, what didn't work, and then I'll show you how I do it, and you decide if it's better. It's the same thing, like I wish I could have had opportunities as an S2 before I'd ever gone to Bullock, because I didn't know what the value of what I was learning, because I hadn't seen, like, there's been many times where it'd be like, man, I wish I could go back through Bullock now, because now I know, like, I remember I got a brief, but my mind didn't have a reason to remember it, so I dumped it. But now I'm pretty sure I would really benefit from that information, from that training, because now I know where it's missing in my life, And so I think being able to operate like this, where you're accepting risk, and where he says further on is the willingness to underwrite the mistakes of others, and to say, hey, you've got an idea, I think it's stupid, I don't like it, I wouldn't do it, but I honor your agency and initiative to go and give it a try. Go see what happens. As long as let me know what the risks are, I'm going to accept prudent risk that doesn't put life, limb, or property at risk. But go and try it, and then let's talk about it later. And if something goes wrong, it's on me. Like, I'm underwriting the risk. I'm signing the deliberate risk assessment on this.
I think that connects also with parenting, right? Your kid makes a mistake, and you have two options, right? You can browbeat them. Well, what's that going to get them? They're not going to tell you about their mistakes, and it directly applies. Or you can say, well, did you learn something? And as a parent, as a leader, whatever category it is, we've talked about ownership in the previous episode, is allowing that, creating that environment, creating that clarity. And it also goes back to, we talked at the beginning of the last episode about writing a command philosophy. Now, in my case, I started to write a little bit what I thought each special team in my company should do. But I quickly realized, as they took my guidance and they kind of changed it all around, and they did their own thing. And so I'm looking at it going, well, that's not how I would have done it. But the end result was still what I wanted. We got PT training. We got language training. We got weapons training. We accomplished everything that we set out to do, going through our critical task list. Everybody started understanding what a medal was. Mm-hmm. Was it exactly how I envisioned it? If I had written so much in my command philosophy or in my team SOP, okay, here, you guys, you're on this team, here's your SOP. If I had written it in such detail that they felt like they can't change anything, we wouldn't have progressed as far as a company than we did when they were allowed to take initiative and kind of just take a guiding philosophy, take an end state, and build the steps on their own. I think that's, talking about wishful thinking, and we've had this discussion before where you just start to get the hang of it, and then they're like, okay, your command is done. What? Wait, what?
Yeah.
But my advice to anyone is I try to connect with younger officers and soldiers of all ranks is, number one, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't try to do everything at once, and listen to everyone around you, because everyone has valuable experiences. Everyone has a value proposition to bring to the table. And yeah, we're not going to have maybe the opportunity to be company commanders again, at least maybe not at the 03 level, maybe at the 04, there's a couple commands. And then you get higher up. As long as we're taking those with us and we're sharing those lessons learned with people who haven't had that opportunity, maybe that little bit can help them succeed, back off, whatever it is that their personality is requiring of them.
And then finally, Major General Turley closes out. Again, it is an honor to lead the Utah National Guard. This is an organization of dynamic, ethical, strong, and capable people. Never forget that soldiers and airmen are our credentials. We must be prepared to lead them through the 3 Bs: be clear, be accessible, be bold. So final thoughts command philosophy or command philosophies in general. Eric, on the spot.
Yeah. So I liked this command philosophy. A lot of it resonated with me. My final thought on it is something that he mentioned. I think it was in point number 4 in the second B. It's the last point in the second B. There it is. Bottom line, this business is a people business. People have as much emotionally invested as they do intellectually invested. And because we're in the Army, because we're in this profession, sometimes you hear, we like to down talk feelings, right? It's like, oh, did I hurt your feelings? The touchy-feely. But you know what? I love that statement because the Army is an organization, and the organization is made of people. And people, first and foremost, even beyond their rationality, are emotional. And leadership, the reason it isn't art is because leadership isn't at its core a rational act. It is a person and emotion-based endeavor. And the whole point of leadership is to get what we call human beings that are socially hierarchical, and they care about what you look like, and they care about how you talk, and they care about all these things that we rationally know don't make a lot of sense. But to take all those ideas, feelings, and emotions and knit them together to accomplish a goal. And so I love that he emphasizes that this is about the touchy-feely. And I hope everyone understands that it's always about the touchy-feely. It's always about the feelings. It's always about the emotions. And if you don't get it, you're probably not going to lead for very long.
Rebecca?
I could not agree more with that, is that if you don't emotionally listen to your people and treat them like people, if you treat them like objects, they're not going to follow you. You're going to end up with turnover. And as Eric said, you're not going to be leading very long, whatever level you are. Everybody wants to contribute, or they wouldn't have enlisted or commissioned. And I know that all of us here in this room are Army. We've also got our Air Force brethren. And when we go to fight, we're working alongside Navy and Marines. And we all have to, okay, we can talk about, stereotypes for sailors and Marines and airmen. But in the end, it's a people business. Get to know your people. And I think at our level, we're still, the company grade level, we have the benefit of still being a little bit in that innocent strata, right? And then as you move up to field grade, there's a lot less innocence. And I think my recommendation is to anybody who's listening is don't forget where you came from. Don't forget how you got there. You didn't get there alone. You got there through some initiative of your own, some initiative of others, multiple brains working together, and all people coming together to help get you where you are. And so whether you're a major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, general, General Turley's guiding principles hold weight. They hold value. And I think this is probably one of the best leadership philosophies I've ever read.
I agree. So that will do it for this conversation. This is, again, the Golden Nugget Podcast, Company Grade Officer Table Talk. I want to thank Captain Eric Johnson and Captain Rebecca Doucette for joining us. If you have ideas or if you would like to participate in future episodes of the Company Grade Officer Table Talks, please send an email to NGAUTMEDIA@gmail.com. Again, that's NGAUTmedia@gmail.com. And thank you all for listening, and we hope to see you.